We've got, we're going to talk a little bit today about that quiz, and we sure appreciate Miss Crouch taking some time out and showing us some of these things. I know when I'd heard a little bit about it, I thought it was something that could be valuable for every classroom. History, science, math, English, whatever you're doing, I think you could take some time and use this to create quizzes and then have them and keep them. And so, but we can ask lots of questions. I will, Miss Crouch, I'm going to let you draw. We get a $15 Sonic gift card. So you choose
There.
what we got here. The winner today is Miss Newton.
Yay.
Did you win last time too? This is
No.
great. No, good for you. We'll let the rich get richer. Great job. So, like I said, we appreciate it. And Miss Crouch, get us going here.
So I gave everyone a packet so that if you have to leave or whatever, the first page kind of gives an intro, and the back gives step-by-step how to set up a class, how to edit a test, that type of thing, so you can go back and forth. If you decide you want to use it and you're not sure, please, my email is at the bottom on the front. Email me. I've got a plan here. I can come and kind of help you set things up. I was saying earlier, I found this website 10 years ago, and I've been using it for about 10 years. So if you go through here, this is the opening page up here. So when you're going to set up a class, you would go, I've got the arrows in your deal. You would go up here, create an account. I think it's mouse to work. Well, maybe not. There we go. And it asks for your name, typically your name, your school, what email address you want to use, and a password. And so it's super simple. So here's the thing about this. It's wonderful, especially if you have a smart board. It originally started 10 years ago as just a math website in terms of what was pre-programmed. You've always been able to write your own test. Multiple choice, matching, what I call it's a cheap version of PowerPoint, or it looks like PowerPoint, where you can download JPEGs into it, click and drag and make multiple choice within that, or fill in the blank, which is really nice. So if you have, I know that a couple years ago here that it was used when we were trying to make some district benchmark tests for some of the younger grades. So we were able to go and clip problems from the state website, not breaking copyright law, clip problems, and could download them. And then we could just click and drag over the matching, so we could actually select matching, so things like that. Or if you have graphs and things you want to do. The nice thing, especially if you have, and I would almost say younger, when I taught some of the younger classes, I've taught everything from 6th grade up. On a smartboard, all of these are buttons. So if you click on one of them, it'll show up. So sometimes if I found something that I knew was pre-programmed, that was what we were doing that day, hey, at the end, click on it, and kids, it didn't keep a score, but the kids would come to the board, work through some things. Some other things that they have added over the years, it's all programmed. It has English, Spanish, French, and German. It does vocabulary. It does some short translations. You can choose which way you want to translate. It doesn't have the entire vocabulary by any means. For geography, I don't teach geography, but I love it when my daughter was younger, 5th, 6th grade, when they were doing state capitals. She has her own dad quiz count on mine. I set it up, and she's a freshman this year, so I think we're good. But all the way from 2nd grade up, she had all of her spelling test. I would type in basically misspell all the words, and she had to click. That's how she practiced for her spelling test when she had learned the states. Then she could go through that. For all the geography, it lets you go and choose where you want. You can do all the states, part of the states, any of the countries in the world. You can do rivers. It's all click and drag. So that you can specify to the age that you have if you have need for maps. This science that's pre-programmed, the cells, the anatomy, that is all graphics. And you can choose, just a second, sorry, I'm having mouse issues here. Like for instance, and it's all just click and drag, and I don't know where they go, sorry. Those click and drag, wherever it's at. And over here you can choose, turn around sideways. Well, on the left-hand side, the teacher can choose what cell they want. Animal, plant, all that type of thing. And then once they've done them all, which I'm just going to click OK because it's, right? This is what it shows the student at the end. If they didn't miss anything, it says, hey, you made 100. Now, you have the option to set up how you want it to look. Okay. All my tests that I give, every Algebra 1 test, geometry, I don't have any this year, all of them are online. All my trig tests are online with the exception of when we do proofs. my AP Calculus, the first few chapters, well, only the first chapter is online. After that, we do part online because the AP exam is part multiple choice, so I'm practicing those, and the rest is written. So all of my tests I always set up this way. So it'll show them the parentheses is what they put. Sorry, it won't go. But the parentheses is what they put. The right answer is beside it. This box will tell how long they took to take it, how many they answered, did they skip any, all that. The nice thing is, if I can get it to actually go up there, if they will go click on, the mouse just doesn't like me. Well, it won't let me do it. If they click on the word like capsule, it'll take them back to the problem, show them what they put, and it says see correct answer, and automatically show them the correct answer. Once they've logged out, it won't let them back in. So I have to teach my kids, hey, if you want to see what you missed, do it right then and there. Once you're in the test, it does have the arrows. They can go back and forth and that type of thing. So that is, so that's some of that. Now when you're going to actually do, there it goes. So I've already logged into my account. And this is, and if you kind of go through the pages, you can kind of see where I try to do some screenshots. Oh, here you go. Thank you. So you can kind of see where you're going. There was the opening. This one now, because I have already have stuff in here, it normally comes up with this instruction page that you scroll through that says how to edit a test, how to set up a class. That's typically what comes up. I just have a lot of stuff. Okay. And right now I have in the practice class, so if you see the white up there, drop down, it'll show every class. I keep my classes for about 3 years. I don't know why I picked that number, but I can go back for 3 years and tell every kid and every test they took for me, and I can click on the grade in the grade book, and it'll show me that end screen exactly what they missed, what they put, and everything. I don't know if you need to keep them for 3 years, but I do. And I just did some different things here. So if you need to make a new class, which is where you would start, so you would click on new class, and it would bring up, let's see, there we go, that screen that I gave you there, that next page. So for every class, you would need to do this, or anything that you want separate. I think that's the next page over. And I wrote you some notes on here to kind of go back. So you just type in the names that you want. You can add more lines. The default is 8. Obviously, most of us don't have classes 8, but you can add. Haven't quite found a limit. I think the largest class I've ever had was 40-something. Not here, but doing something else. You can do first names, last names only, however you want to do it. I can't get by with first names because we have multiple of the same students. That also will give you an option you can go in and make it password protected, and where the students have to have a password again other than just the test code or their emails. I've never done that because I didn't have the necessity for what I was doing it. Since most of mine's done in class, there wasn't any need to have that type of security. But it is an option, you can do that. Type it in. Once you've named it and saved it, then it just goes over here to your class list. And you can see these are all of my classes here that I currently have in there. So the nice thing is, and I went and took one, and I took out all the names. So once you have a class, okay, so I have a class. Normally your class, this one blank the very first time. So this is a semester from Trig a couple of years ago. This is everything they took that entire semester, okay? And as you can see, a lot of them I have multiple versions. This software is like any other software. The first time you do it, you go, this is going to take me forever to type and get it. But once you do a couple, you're like, oh, this isn't that big a deal. Because once you do it, it's there. I've been doing it for 10 years. I have 300 and something tests in there. I've deleted a few that technically were really outdated. Nothing has ever disappeared. They never told me I've reached a max still. There's got to be a limit. I just don't know what it is. So I have everything from 6th grade up to AP Calculus of stuff I've done, plus my daughter's stuff for spelling test. So once you create a test, and you would go over to where it says, over here, well, let's do it. If I want pre-programmed, where it says common test here, integers, fractions, vocabulary, that's the English, the Spanish if you need those, geometry, science. If you click on those, and you can merge one you created with what they have there, which is what I do a lot of times. So if I click here, let's say we're going to go do, I don't know, science. Okay, we're going to do a science test. And I can pick cells. Let's say we're going to do anatomy. Okay, so this will come up, and then I choose what I want. I choose, well, it says level. On some of these, if you change the level, it'll actually make them harder. I haven't played a lot with anatomy because I don't have to teach anatomy. So I don't know changing the level. Some of them, the level change does not affect what it is on the click and drag ones. I will tell you that. I know on the math, I know on the vocabulary ones, if you're doing English words, Spanish words, a lot of the math ones, especially if they're graphing or they're finding a trig function or something like that, it will actually change the level. It'll make them harder to do. The click and drag doesn't really do a lot for the level. But you can pick the level if it's something. You can have a timer if you want it to be a time test. When my daughter was learning her times tables in 3rd grade, every Monday night I'd sit down, whatever they were doing, I'd make her up a test, and I'd put 60 seconds on it. And I set it up where it wouldn't show her what she missed, and I set it up to where if she didn't make 100, it wouldn't take her name off the list, so she had to redo it. And that's how she'd practice. So you can do a timer. I typically do a timer for the high school of 2 hours because our class is an hour and a half. I mean, I can make it 85 minutes. The reason I do that is if someone's absent and comes back to make up the test and makes it up after school or whatever, they have the same amount of time as everybody else. It just eliminates well, I should be absent because they got an extra 30 minutes I didn't get. So I typically set it to, I say 2 hours, about 90 minutes. I said 2 hours, sorry, about 90 minutes. So that helps Olivia with that. But you can do them timed. They don't have to be, but you can. And then on this one, I can choose, I want the front, the back, whatever you want. I can uncheck whatever I don't want on. And if you're just doing part of the body. Pick a name. We're just going to pick a name. I have my glasses on so I see the keyboard better. We're going to name it. Let's call it body. Right? And I'm going to assign it. So whatever class I have open here, that's what's automatically going to put it. So I'm in my trig, 3rd period spring. Or I can assign it to all the classes I have. Yeah, we've had some internet problems today. And it would put it there. It's not going to because there's some internet issues going on. Mm-hmm. It's having a hard time getting a connection. But it would stick it over there so that when I go back to see test, it would show up at the very top. It's just that we're having some internet connections. I've had some problems. I gave tests today in the computer lab, and for the most part it worked just fine. Okay. But it automatically dump it. And it dumps it at the top. It does in the order that you did them. And once you're there, if you want to go, let's say you want to edit it. You've got what you want, but you want to change the timing on it. So we'll just go with special right triangles. So I can go over here. I can get my mouse to come over here. Come on. There it is. I'm going to check this test. I'm going to edit it. I can duplicate it if I need some. I do this, sometimes I'll duplicate it if I need multiple. I don't always make 2 versions of a test, but sometimes I have test A and test B, and it's the exact same test. I just randomize it. So depending on what my time frame is, I may have test A, B, and C, especially if it's a large class, and I just randomize it. It'll generate a different code, and they're not supposed to be looking at it, right? So it'll randomize it. So I can duplicate the test, have multiple versions of the same version, which kind of helps when you have a large class, or if you have a friendly
modified for special ed.
Or modified for special ed, or a friendly class. Let's put it that way. That you need to have more than one version, even if they don't realize it's different versions. Yeah, friendly class. All right, you got to find them out. There we go.
And it'll just rearrange the questions for you and make a second version?
So, well, okay, when I clicked on edit. So on this one, this was all pre-programmed stuff. So when you duplicate it, it will not change the order unless you want it to. So when you click on edit, you get this screen. And in the top left, it'll tell what date you dumped the test over there. You can type, you can have it, I always make mine expire. I normally do make them expire about, you click on that, go to the calendar, and I only click about 3 or 4 weeks. One of the reasons I do that because mathematically I know at some point they're going to run out of codes. And they did at some point because they never used to have, these codes used to follow a certain pattern, and about 3 years ago they changed the pattern of the codes. So now they've never sent an email, hey, would you delete ones that you no longer need? But if you don't choose expire, it's there forever. And I'm just doing it because I'm thinking, I can still reuse the test, I just have to give it a new date. But at least it's not floating out there for someone. you can do a new test, like I put this as test B, so this is my, let's say it was my duplicate copy. I can pick a level, which means I can say, hey, it was 10th grade or 11th grade. You don't have to pick a level. Most of mine say 1. They're not first grade. I just normally don't bother because it doesn't affect what I've done. I can put a time limit, which I typically put the class limit, so for the absentee issue. Order, that's the one. So right here, I can click here and make it random or fixed. Mine are all random, with the exception of, well, a calculus test I'm giving, a take-home calculus test I'm giving, because they're going to do all their work and they're going to type the answers in for me. And here's one thing, you can set them to expire for a certain date. Like calculus has this Friday, they have a part written in class, and they have a written take-home test. But to make it fair to everyone, I want them all done by midnight on Sunday. They have to bring I'm going to grade the written, but they'll all get a code, and they know this. They'll have to log in, and it'll say problem 1, problem 2, and they're going to have to type their final answer in. Well, if they don't do it before midnight, then I know they didn't do it before midnight, and it won't let them in after midnight, because I picked an expiration date of midnight on Sunday for their deal. So for that one, I did fixed, so that way the problem numbers are all in the same order, because they're typing in their answer. But other than that, I pretty much randomize everything. Then I can work it tells me the length, and then the test code. And this test code in the corner, which will be the same on the screen before, is what I give the kids. And the very last page of here, I have a copy of what I give my kids. There's a sample deal at the top. I get a half page. That way I can do 2 to page, say paper. At the top would be if I was doing just regular homework, like multiple deals, we went to the computer lab that day, or whatever, where they're just homework grades. And the bottom, it's the same process, they just have more codes to do. The bottom is a test. It'll say they got test A or test B. It has instructions where to go, they type it in, and it pulls up the class list, and they pick their name. Click their name, and then it takes them to the test. I can type instructions here, like it says for the computer, remove your name. This one, when I did it, it was a homework assignment, and I allowed them to do it more than once, but they had to pass it to do it all. So it says for the computer, remove your name and receive your grade. You have to make at least, my glasses on, a 60 on it. So if they just made a 50, it showed they didn't do it at all, and they had to go back and do it again. All of these things, right here on the right where it says show detail, show grade alone. For homework types assignments, if I'm going to let them redo it, I do show grade alone. Okay. If not, there's always a sacrificial lamb, and I tell the kids who clicks through so it shows all the right answers, right, then shares with their buddies before they do it. I do for all my classes in the blog. I've done this for all of them. Like I've already given out. They have a code. It's a bonus. It's a bonus deal. It's a lot of problems. I've taken all the tests we've given. I've merged them all, deleted out about a third of them, right, to give a nice picture for the block exam. It's their bonus. They got it this week. It's due midnight before they take their block exam next week, and it's worth up to 10 points on their block exam grade. Okay, it's 80-something problems. Calculus, I put a timer on 4 hours because they're AP Calculus. Trig, Geometry, Algebra 2, I typically don't do a timer. They don't have to do it in one setting. You can make them do it, but I don't because their schedules are crazy. And so what it'll do for that is I don't show the grade on that. So when they're done, they know what they made, but they don't know what they missed. Hence, they can't go share it with somebody else. You know, they don't need the extra credit, but their buddy does. They can't miss them all and just take a screenshot and give it to them. On my test in class, we do the show detailed grade. That's who got that page. That's who got that page where it says, hey, I missed this, go click on it. And you can also do if you don't show any results whatsoever. On this side, this is something new. Every year they add something. The one downside of this is they don't tell you, it's a free website. I don't pay for it, have it for 10 years. So I always kind of play around when the school starts because there's just stuff they just add that just shows up. Used to, if we were in the computer lab and the internet went out, we lost everything we had done because it didn't automatically send every time you save. Now they have autosave and not autosave. I don't know why you wouldn't save it. So the way we found out they changed this is one of the first tests we gave. Actually, the computer didn't go out. There is, on the test screen, when you're in test screen, we call it the evil fish. I don't know why they did it. 3 years ago, they put up a little cute picture of a fish. And if you click the fish, it kicks you out of everything you're doing. It's like an exit button. We call it the evil fish because they want to play with it. They're high school. They love it. They're like, well, what's the fish do? And then we would have lost everything. So someone clicked the fish. I didn't think to say anything. They're like, Miss Crouch, my test is all gone. It's like, well, what did you do? I just clicked the cute little fish. It's like, oh, you clicked the evil fish. So we log back in because I tell them, because I make them do their work as they go, and they have to turn that in. They can't just turn in a slip of paper. They have to turn the work in to get full credit for it. And that's how we found there was autosave, because they logged back in and it was all still there. It picked up where they left off. So I would say they've changed something, and I went and found it. They've changed that. If I'm here and this is the test I've made, this was all pre-programmed. I just went to geometry and picked stuff. Because this was a review thing in Trig for the first chapter. If I decide I don't like this problem, I can delete. I can check what I want to delete. I can shuffle the order, which I don't do because I randomize it anyway. I can insert. So if I'm here and I realize, I like that, but I actually want to add something else in, I can go click insert. And I can pick, so it's the menu on the left, integers at the top. I can go to any of these, integers, and insert averages, or fractions and insert something, or geometry, or English, or a map, whatever you want to. It'll let you pick, it's just like it'll say, pick how many you want to insert and make the test bigger. This is when I've written one and I want to add some program. I write mine first, add it to the DIL, and then I just go insert, hey, but I need 4 of these triangles and need 2 of these maps, stuff like that. Okay. Any particular questions of anything else on this room?
What is, so the entire, well, number one, your, the first part of this back page would be a great lesson when you have a substitute of this. They've got this on here. You could have an activity form that just kind of said, number one, go to the following website, do this if you can get the lab, and let them go in there and work on that. I would assume. But then the other thing I was thinking is, right now you have other math. I saw this in another math teacher's class.
Yes.
And so I don't know if is the whole department using this currently?
No.
To some extent,
But
select individuals?
to my knowledge, the only ones who've ever used it since I've been here and talked about it is, I know Dina Corsi, who has since retired, used it in Algebra 1. And we used to have classroom sets of Nooks. And so we could use the Nooks, and she did a lot of, for the Algebra 1, they could come in and that really was their warm-up. So they came in, there was a code on the board, they got their Nook, they did it, it automatically graded it, and went right to the grade book. I would do, sometimes if I couldn't get the computer lab, I would use the Nooks and do it that way.
We used to have all the pass benchmarks
Yeah.
on that quiz until they got rid of the pass skills.
Yeah.
And then we put all the Common Core skills on that quiz until they got rid of Common Core. And nobody took the time, including me, to do the new Oklahoma Academic Standards and create benchmarks, because we don't even know what the test is going to look like. And so we have at some point had a lot of stuff on here.
Right.
But like she said, it expires if the content expires.
Yeah. And that's why I was referring earlier when I said before that you can do JPEGs, and Debbie, who I was talking about when they took stuff off to go download them, so we had them for the grades. I know I use it. I know Mr. Burton uses it when he teaches trigger geometry. I know Mr. Coulter uses it for his geometry. And to my knowledge, that's the only ones right now who are using it at the high school.
So, and you may show us, but when you're analyzing that, can you disaggregate that information and see?
Oh, look what it, okay. So, if you're a stats person, let me go back. Okay, so let me show you the grade. If I go to grade, so I'm in this, here's my class, there's all my tests, right? And so I want to see the grades. I have to go back all the time because this is a really old one. Okay, come on. There it goes. Okay. So this is and I took all their last names out, and I made sure your daughter, I thought, okay, was this the class I had your daughter?
Okay.
Yeah. But I took all the last names out because it's an old class from 2015. So here's what we did the entire deal. And the reason you see blanks is because most of them might have 2 versions of the test. So what's really nice is if I go here, let's go to this first one right here. If I click on the title, now you can graph it. Like you can do a bar graph to show all the deals for that assignment. You can do a scatter point, so you can easily see who, and I do this sometimes. I do this a lot in my classes, unless I have one who's an extreme outlier, if you know what I mean, where Because I don't want, even though their names, now if I scroll over, their names will show up, by the way. I don't want someone to look and they know they're the one who made the 20 on the test. And our kids are smart, and they'll bug somebody till they figure it out. Or even if they don't bug people, I have great kids, it'll make that person feel bad. So if I have a true outlier, I typically, unless it's high, I normally don't show it. But on a test that's a fairly normal curve, I'll put this up and just say, hey, if you want to know kind of what the average grade was, or I'll just get the average off of it. So you can do that. My favorite, which is really nice, because I want to go back, because I'll look at it. Great, there we go. I want to know, well, what do I need to go over again? So if you click on the title, it's a summary of all the kids, which I can do this frequently missed. It'll show me 9 out of the kids missed this problem. Okay, so it shows me the most missed to the least. So I can say, okay, I need, if most of the class missed it, that needs to be my warm-up the next day. The other thing that's even better is if I go click on it inside this one, for every single problem, it'll show me the percentage breakdown for every problem, show me the students that missed it. So this to me is the best deal, because I can go say, hey, wait, 59% missed number 15. Let's go see what 15 was. So that tells me that for whatever reason, there was something about that problem that almost half the class didn't get.
Well, and do you know right now, is there anyone teaching trig when you're teaching trig? Are there any other math teachers like same hour, like let's say you both have trig second hour? If you can disaggregate just what you're showing, and maybe that in a subject where your kids, it wasn't their best, maybe their students are performing better. Well, now you've got some team teaching scenarios, and you can share concepts and do things like that within the department.
This typically in the fall, Mr. Burton and I both teach at least one. Like I know I have 2 trig classes. He normally has at least one because he's ACT prep. This fall, the way the schedule worked out, that wasn't a necessity. But when we both teach trig, we give exactly the same test on exactly the same day, so we can compare and figure out. And we've done that for this is my 7th year, and I've taught trig every year except for the first semester. I came mid-year. So he and I always do that because we can easily see, we don't necessarily have to go to this screen, but we can easily see from the grades, okay, what messed up and what do we need to change. There's been several semesters when I taught geometry that Mr. Coulter and I had geometry, and then a semester 2, Mr. Burton also had it, and all 3 of it, we get the exact same geometry test on the exact same day. Our homework assignments may vary. In trig, they don't really. We try to stay pretty accurate to help with that, because you get a lot of upper level of well, so-and-so is easier than so-and-so. So he and I sit down and we plan, this is what we're going to do. We vary a little bit, but very little. Where in theory, someone could transfer from his class to my class in week 6 and never miss a beat. And their grades would match up perfectly, with a few exceptions in terms of homework. Mr. Coulter and I and Mr. Burton, when we did geometry all together, we did the same thing. Now, we varied a little bit more homework with the geometry because of the clientele that we had was a little more diverse for geometry. But it provides it's really nice, and it allows us to have that conversation of my class, the test average was good, but obviously this concept, what it was covering, did not go well for that.
And then maybe they say, hey, well, my kids scored a little higher there. How are you? Is there something different you're doing there?
How did you do it in class?
Or you want to come teach my kids for a day? I'll go in your class and do some remediation and work on an area that my kids can.
We've never switched kids. I haven't thought about that, but we have definitely.
You two could switch. The kids could stay.
We've never switched yet.
Right.
But we have done. But it has allowed Mr. Burton and I and Mr. Coulter and I, when we both taught the same things, to go through, because it just was this whole. It just makes it nice. You have someone you have something that's valid. It also allows you to win from a teacher perspective in terms of parents. If you go to let me just pull this. Oh, I don't want the one that had the 100. That doesn't help us. That's 100. Doesn't show anything. Let's do this one. Let's do someone who did not have a good day here. All right, let's do this one here. Okay. So it shows me this screen that they finished with, and this person made a 70. They did all 43 problems, and they took 66 minutes, which they really tried. Right? They just struggled. But one thing I've learned over the last several years using this, because it keeps the time, and this isn't that I set a timer on this, it automatically runs a clock. If you have a timer, it runs it down in the top corner for the kids. The other corner says how many problems. If you don't have a timer, it runs it up, and it records when they submitted it. And what I found is my students who are ornery, right? That it would be there, whatever, and they're just clicking through and they're making 20s and 30s because they spent 5 minutes on it. And you get that conversation from that parent. I can say, Bob made a 50 on his last trig test or his geometry test or his reading test or whatever, and say, there were 43 problems and he submitted it after 8 minutes. And in all the conversations I've had over the last 10 years with parents that are upset because their child, now sometimes it's just they tried really hard and they just struggle with it. But for those kids the honor kids that we have, I've never had a parent say, and I'm sure there's one that will someday, that when I showed them the screen says, well, I understand he had all A's on his homework, but there were 43 problems on the test, and he submitted it after 9 minutes and 3 seconds, because it actually goes to the seconds on there. And I was like, I think if he spent some time, giving himself some time to actually let the problem sink in, he might do better. And every meeting I've been with the parents, like, oh. And a few times they've called a principal, and I'm with the principal, and this parent's griping that it's me, and I pull this up, and I've never had a principal that said, well, it's kind of argue if they spent 9 minutes on 43 problems. It's kind of hard to say that the teacher was at least trying to help them with something. So it helps on that side. It's helped me out when one school I taught at, I had a special ed student, had their own aide. They had their own room. They came to my class periodically. And given the IEP, I was responsible for all their assignments to be on level for them. And so what I did was I set up the account in that quiz. The level this child was at, everything was pre-programmed. I mean, we're talking, shapes and fractions and all that type of stuff. And I just printed off I would do about 20 at a time. I just print off that test sheet and give it to his teacher who took care of him. And it was great, because when he had a good day, they would go do 1 or 2. When he didn't have a good day, then they didn't do any. But when it came to an IEP meeting, she was able to go in and print out all of his information, his grade book, showed all the times, the dates they did it, so they could track for his IEP, because they had to track how much time he spent in math every single day. It also allowed some of the other subject areas. Math was what I used it for, because that's what I had them for. But I know that when I left school, they were looking at doing it for some other subject areas, like for reading, to go and they were going to do vocabulary with it, actually, but that type of thing. The English vocabulary, I don't think it went low enough for him for that, but it goes fairly low. So it gives you kind of that deal of whether you're trying to, with a parent, help, or a child to say, look, here it is, and it's not really black and white because it's green and something, but, and also if you have, and I know a lot of the IEP laws have changed in the last year, but that would give IEP teachers who are, especially if they're contained, some options that's kind of one-on-one. And the comment I made earlier was it's kind of a drab website. It's been this color for 10 years. I haven't changed a bit, other than the yellow fish that shows up on the test. But I will say this, the upside is I had learned when my special ed kids who have used it actually was better because it was not stimulating to them in a bad way. So I guess I have to say it was. Kind of good for that. Okay, let me close this one here. So that is kind of what it looks like from that end. And like, here's all the different, you can do elements, all the chemistry. You just choose what you want, type what you want, hit assign, and it'll assign to whatever class you've typed in, which is nice. So we've got that, anatomy, we have all the cells. The conversions, it's got a couple of different things you can convert with. The geography, I give these things a little load. Geography, I clicked right, there we go. You can do the Americas, you can pick what states you want, US, Canada, Ecuador, I mean anything. So especially for the ones who have more junior high or younger that needed the maps, you can do Europe. Africa's new, they hadn't had Africa before. Asia's new this year. So all of that, if you're thinking younger, you'll like integers. They've added some basic calculus. They've got fractions where I love this. If you have younger kids, if you're dealing with younger kids, your own children or some younger ones, where did I lost them? I loved this one because it is the shading. They can click and drag, lots of click and drag, which is nice for, especially if you have younger ones that you're trying to work with, arithmetic, and you just pick kind of what you want. So that's how, if you want to do one that they have. If you want to design your own, you can, okay, if you click Browse, this will allow you to type in, this is any test any teacher who's created that has made it public domain. You have the option to ship public or private. You can go browse. If they have it, you can download it. Now the one thing is, unless they have changed it this year, if you download it from here, you can delete problems, but you can't edit. Like, you can't fix typos and stuff. You can't actually go, because it's their content. But if you have something you like, sometimes I'll find something and I'll download theirs and just merge it. I'll add it to what I have. Click the merge button for mine. Okay. So to do your own. Oh, here's one thing that's also new. We've always been able to share with teachers. I know we had to give codes when Debbie was doing that, and then the last 2 years they've had it where when I did the test, it has the code. I had to give the code. Well, when I created, I wrote most of the test for the trig and the geometry, and I know Chad Coulter has written with all the change in skills. I can't think. I'm losing the word, but state regulations. He's gone through. He's now updated most of those tests. He's changed them all to make them, because we had to tweak some of what I had done. But we used to have to go and give them the code and then copy the URL for him to actually have access to mine. So now they've added this, which you can go. I can now go just type in his email, and my assumption is that then you can just send it to him, and I don't have to do the whole copy paste and things that we were kind of having to do. So that hopefully will help it. So if you're with a group, either departmental or you're all third grade or fourth grade, or you're trying to share stuff, this hopefully makes it a little easier to share. So if you're going to design, okay, so I have 369 right now. So this is where I'm at. I'm on the Click Design page. This is a copy of this. This is if I want to produce something myself. And I click Design. A couple of things. It cut off slides. I apologize. I tried to pencil it in. So you can do 3 types of tests. You can do straight matching, right? You type in one side, the other side, and it'll match. You can do questions, which is multiple choice. You type in the question, and then you type in what you want A, B, C, or D to equal, right? And then slides. Slides is what I call the cheap version of PowerPoint. That's what I use most, because typically I'm doing multiple different things. And if you are, once you get several, just a few things, if you clicked here, just a minor, there it goes. It'll actually alphabetize for you. I don't have a lot of 6th grade stuff. Or I can do the other way, it'll alphabetize the other way. So if you have a lot that's more than one page, it makes it quicker to find. And you can also use the arrow and scroll through what you have and see all the different things and stuff. So I can duplicate. When I make more than one version, I type the first one. I'm going to click Slides over here. On the next page, you should see this show up on your next page in your packet. I'll write the first one. I'll name it Test A, right? Then I'll go back and I'll click Duplicate, right? So I'll go into the same test and just change the numbers, right? So I don't have to retype it all and redo it. It shows up like a PowerPoint. It shows up like a white slide on their screen. The one downside that I've noticed here, and I don't know if it's a here issue or not, because this is typically where we use it, is when you do the slides, they typically are fairly small on the screen. So a lot of times, and maybe it's my side, the kids never complain about it, but I always tell them, if you hit the Control plus deal, a lot of times you want to blow it up a little bigger. And then you just click and drag, name it whatever you want. Tell me when I'm supposed to stop. And if I want to click A, I can type in whatever I want. Right? And let's say I want it to be an answer where they can't just, I can click and drag that. Well, if it would let me, there it goes. And then type whatever answer I want. I want the answer to be fine. So on their screen, it'll show up, how are you, in a white box. And they type the answer in. Now here's the one thing, if it doesn't match yours exactly, it'll count it wrong. So I always go back to my grade book, click on every single test every child takes to see what they did, first of all, to see kind of where we're at. And also to see, is there a typo? I'm surprised how many they misspell true, or they misspell false, or they misspelled none the other day. None, they didn't put the E on the end of it. Or If I realized everybody missed something, then I realized, oh, wait a second, I put an actual extra space in there. Something, that maybe is wrong with the test. So I always go back and check. Anyway, so I know what they do, but also can catch typos with it. If you want something to be multiple choice, do a second, the board. I don't know where it did it. Oh, well.
Just use the back button.
The back button, okay.
Maybe if the mouse will let you.
Yeah, it does not like me. No, I don't think it. There we go. It's not. If I want if I want to type a question, I want it to be multiple choice. That's the one I wrote on there. You just click and drag this one. Maybe, maybe not. And then it lets you type what you want, and you can choose which one you want. They're individual. You don't have to have them vertical. You can click off, and you can move them wherever you want. And when you double click, then you hit the alphabet. I'm going to click in it. And then notice you type what you want, and you can choose whether you want that to be the correct answer or the incorrect answer, that type of thing. So you can choose if you want to. By default, there's always one that says correct, and the other two are not. So if you're doing something where it says, if you want to do choose all the following that satisfy whatever vocabulary word or whatever, you can make more than one the correct answer. It does because it is basically original math website. It does have math symbols. If you click the arrows by the math, it scrolls through, kind of like on a keyboard, but it would give different things for that. You can also do so that, and of course, that's the next. You just do and once you've done what you have on that one, I was going to click next, maybe not. There it goes. Oh, I'm not sure why it's not happy. It does not like me. Well, if you click next, it goes to an empty screen. You do problem 2. Also, it has the fraction bar. You can click down if you want to do a fraction. Not that you have to have a fraction answer for math. If you have something that you want them to do above and below. I can do, from a math perspective, all the shapes I can draw. The little square, I think, is a graphing. So you can do number lines, graphs, type equations in. It does have some limitations to what it'll let you type in terms of graph. It will allow you to also see where it says image. You can download your own stuff. If you're like, I really need a picture of this chart, or let's say it's a reading assignment and it's going to describe this picture or something, you could actually click on that. It'll let you download JPEG and then put it in your DIL. Then you can put whatever you want around it. Okay. And then once you're done, you would name it, save it. It goes to that list, your design list, and you can check on it and add it to whatever class you want. It'll let you change all the colors up there. You can undo stuff. Any particular questions or comments?
So each slide is a different question.
Different question.
If you choose the other forms of the test, then it's more of like a running test?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this will show up like a PowerPoint on their screen. It'll only show them one slide at a time. The other one will show up as all together.
It's on the
Well,
document.
yeah, the multiple choice may not all fit on the screen. So if you do a really long multiple choice, it probably will scroll. The matching typically show on one screen, and so. Can you think anything else about? I think that kind of goes. Let's see. I think that was kind of it. We already kind of talked about the last one. That was just a copy of a test I did. You can go and edit. Once you've done it, once you've assigned it, you can go in and edit and change whatever timing you want or whatever. And I really like it. It is not perfect. There are some things that I've not been able to do just because of the limitations of the graphics that I could find to download. They've added, I don't know where it went. It's probably back on the screen. They added 2 years ago an essay button, and that I use occasionally. I use it more in trig than anything else, like some in calculus on some of the multiple choice over the online we do, and where basically you ask them a question, and typically I'm asking theory, right? They type it in. It does not grade the essay questions, but at the end, when you go to click on their grade in the grade book, it'll show you whatever they missed in the regular ones, and then you go grade the essay questions yourself. I do them they call it essay. I do them as a short answer, and so that's one. If you want to do the whole type of paragraph, or if the paragraph's to the side, you just want the answer in the book, on the screen. Tell the main ideal of this. Well, that's hard to get a really specific idea if you want them to be typing and actually not just. I'm not I'm not a huge, multiple choice has its place. I do a combination, but I never, ever have a test that's all multiple choice. And I always make sure it's not more than, that's definitely not the higher percentage, because they need to be able to work it out, because life is not multiple choice. And so, anyway. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, thank you for doing that. And it seems to me that it's something that any of us that are using quizzes, it's something that could be valuable. And you know, if you have a strong curriculum, you use the same test year in, year out.
Yeah.
It might be efficient.
Yeah.
Then there's good practice tests for kids. They can do it at home, it sounds
Yes.
like. So,
You just send the code, as long as they have internet connection, you can use it.
yeah.
I will say this is my personal opinion. If you're going to send it home, I occasionally do a take-home test or I do homework on this. They need to have more. They need to have more than a day's notice. I always give my kids a week's notice. Say, hey, next Wednesday I'm going to give you codes. Your homework's going to be online on that quiz, because all my kids don't have internet. We can't assume that, and that gives them a week to figure out they're going to go to Grandma's house or go to the Choctaw Library and use that. And I always give at least a week's notice if I'm going to have to send something home online. But if you were doing a regular part of your curriculum, you could say, hey, every Friday your homework's going to be online for the weekend or something like that. And so, okay.